Among the many young, incredibly talented artists is a name that refuses to die. Jack Harrington, infamously known as Birdie, a 22-year-old animator and content creator who went viral for his memes and animations in 2017. Birdie began posting on online art forums when he was just 12. His cartoonish, few seconds long loop animations amassed thousands to millions of likes in no time. The art style caught every eye. With an ever-growing audience, the creator began finding comfort and solace on the internet, something he never found at home or anywhere else. On his Twitter, he would constantly rant about his struggles that never seemed to end. According to Birdie's own account, he comes from a very dark background. From facing transphobia to domestic abuse at home, he has shared his battle with several mental illnesses on the internet for a long time. At first, the community accepted him for his struggles and provided a warm space that he had been looking for. But as Birdie's subscriber count peaked, his reputation began to quietly unravel behind the scenes. Allegations of animal misconduct resurfaced several times. Users began compiling evidence of his alleged interactions with underage artists and other problematic figures in the space. People noticed patterns that later became impossible to ignore. Scrutiny grew. Criticism became unending. This major shift in public opinion pushed Birdie to take a long break from the online art community altogether. And when Birdie eventually did return, the internet, having given him a chance at redemption, had already caught on to his manipulative and contradictory history. The situation reached a breaking point when the creator abused the very sympathy that could have saved his life. An $11,000 scam took the art community by storm, and nothing was ever the same again. This is the story of Jack Harrington and how he became the internet's most hated and controversial digital artist. Let's get into it. Back in 2016, the art community was flourishing. Young artists were showcasing their techniques in remarkable ways. Smart tools like Flip-a-Clip were providing a massive tool to these kids and teenagers to express their art, humor, and state of mind. Among these creators emerged Birdie, who managed to create an unavoidable space for himself in a very short time. For a little background, Birdie was born in Washington on September 22, 2004. He was born a female who went by the name Sophie, but later transitioned into a male and took the name Jack Harrington. Birdie, from his own account, is an autistic with mobility issues, and his disability and autism diagnosis gave him a tough time throughout his childhood. Birdie also spoke extensively about his mental health. According to the creator, he had been dealing with psychotic episodes since childhood. While these claims have never been independently confirmed, they would become a recurring explanation for many of his actions and behaviors online.
I ended up having a psychotic break that lasted for months, and the Wi-Fi being out was most of the reason for it. I would like to clarify that I was diagnosed with psychosis in September of 2023, so this is just something that I live with. I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 14 too, but I was in denial about it for a long time, so
These episodes allegedly triggered severe anger outbursts during stressful moments, along with violent, intrusive thoughts, and this would lead to a complicated social life. Birdie struggled to make friends and constantly clashed with his teachers. He describes his school experience as torturous and traumatizing. Teachers would drag him across the discipline room, leaving scratches and wounds on his body. Keep in mind, these claims have no solid backing, and this is something Birdie believed he had.
I'm unsure what disorder in particular I have because I had to stop seeing my psychiatrist because
His home life offered no escape. According to Birdie, he was raised in an abusive household where his parents would constantly mistreat him. He has described his parents as extreme political conservatives. In one of the videos he's posted, Birdie described his parents as racist, sexist, transphobic, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, conspiracy theorists, and much more.
For you. They are conservative Trump supporters. They are racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, conspiracy theorists, hardcore Christians. They're literally in a cult, and they have 6 kids, not including me.
He alleged that this mistreatment was physical, emotional, and sometimes even took the form of SA. Things for Birdie were not pretty, but then his first introduction to a personal laptop changed everything. Unfortunately, for the worse. His father bought him a device when he was very little and taught him how to use MS Paint on it. Learning art ended up being a beautiful experience for Birdie. After practicing on MS Paint for some time, digital art and animation became Birdie's primary coping mechanism. Birdie seemed to have a God-given talent for art, which was meant for bigger platforms. He created several YouTube channels to showcase his work, but only one would eventually take off. His digital creator journey started in 2017, the year he was able to keep his first YouTube channel with the username Damage, Coda 6669. The platform grew big. Birdie managed to score 100,000 subscribers by 2018, within just 1 year of the channel's creation. Although they lacked context for the most part, people loved his animations. His following kept growing and he managed to build a community of his own, but it wasn't only his art that invited so much attention, it was an endless stream of personal drama and an unsettling social circle. Besides YouTube, Birdie was chronically online on platforms like Tumblr, Twitter, Discord, and Google+. There, he would share his drawings and very detailed stories of all the mistreatment he was facing at home, school, or the internet, but what stands out the most is his struggle at home. According to Birdie, problems at home went far beyond simple neglect. Birdie was raised by a mother whom many within the community came to view as deeply neglectful. Unverified online reviews suggested she repeatedly clashed with doctors who wouldn't give her children specific diagnoses, sparking rumors that she was doctor shopping to exploit government disability programs. Not only this, but Birdie's fan community discovered that his mom would post inappropriate images and content on her public Facebook page. This also included collecting glass statues of female private parts. And as all of this was happening, Birdie was integrating whatever he was experiencing at home in his art. The cute, cartoonish, and entertaining memes would turn bizarre. What started as wholesome drawings of My Little Pony characters soon turned into something much darker. The edgy, dark-themed drawings that would frequently cross moral boundaries became a vivid pattern throughout Birdie's art journey. He would draw extremely gory drawings of his original characters to depict his deteriorating mental health. Soon, this gory art would turn into underage explicit material and very concerning comics. Most of Birdie's earlier art would be dedicated to Foxy, a gaming character from an indie game, Five Nights at Freddy's. At first, the drawings would only involve inappropriate themes for a 12-year-old, but screenshots from Discord servers suggested that Birdie was fantasizing about having extreme, non-consensual encounters with Foxy. These posts and discussions were massive red flags, but with zero parental intervention, Birdie spiraled deeper into the darkest corners of the internet. As time went by, Birdie's internet presence kept strengthening, but it was being built on a deeply toxic foundation. As his audience expanded, Birdie began networking with other prominent young animators in the community. One of the most notable characters from Birdie's bizarre digital footprint is Kitty Dog. Kitty Dog was another very well-known and talented animator of the time. Her content revolved around creating original characters, which were usually the hybrids of cats and dogs, which was a norm for the furry art community. In 2017, when he was only 12, Birdie began displaying an unexplainable obsession with Kitty Dog, who at the time was 14. In a creepy way, his art style started resembling hers and he began posting drawings that would depict his romantic obsession with her. Fueled by this obsession, Birdie would get into fights with Kitty Dog's fangirls. He would encourage her fans to self and even drew violent artwork depicting himself attacking them. On the surface, it all seemed like a one-sided, desperate crush, but little did the fans know, Birdie was actually dating Kitty Dog behind the scenes, and the dynamic was anything but an innocent young teenage relationship. The two artists would draw NSFW art of each other's characters and discuss topics that were not appropriate for kids their age. This went on for some time, and when they finally did break up, grooming allegations against Kitty Dog started to surface. It later turned out that Kitty Dog was involved in drawing corn art on Birdie without his consent. The scandal only became public when one of Birdie's biggest fans, who went by the names Fontic, Jaime Goots, and Malachi, leaked the inappropriate art in a Discord server. This leak tarnished Kitty Dog's public image for some time, which brings us to the Fontic guy who became a major piece of controversy in Birdie's entire internet career. Fontic, who later changed his name to Himiguts, was a very active digital artist in the animation meme community. He was only 11 when he began dating Birdie. This relationship went the same way as the previous one. Birdie would develop an intense obsession with Fontic, who seemed equally invested in him. When they would eventually break up, grooming and sexual misconduct allegations against Fontic would become the final truth again, which many people ended up believing back then, but as time passed, more and more of Birdie's statements became contradictory. All of these allegations took on a whole different meaning when Birdie posted a 2 hours long video on April 15th, 2024 titled, "I'm Back." Before this, Birdie had disappeared from the internet completely for 3 whole years. His parents, who were noticing his obsession with the internet, decided to cut it off.
They cut off my internet directly afterwards and they refused to bring it back. This happened when I was 14 too, except when I was 14 I ended up having a psychotic break that lasted for months, and the Wi-Fi being out was most of the reason for it.
During this offline period, Birdie reportedly suffered severe mental breakdowns, allegedly threatening his parents with suicide.
Then I obviously didn't want to have a psychotic break again, and I had nothing else to live for aside from the internet, so I attempted suicide. I told my parents I needed to go to the hospital because I thought I was bleeding out when I was actually fine.
The internet had become the sole purpose of Birdie's entire being. His extremely toxic animation community and controversial circle of friends had become an addiction, and upon losing access to them, he would experience withdrawal symptoms that would manifest in the form of psychotic episodes. After 3 years of a long break, Birdie decided to reconnect with his followers by elaborating on everything that happened before, between, and after the hiatus. The multi-chapters long explanation did a complete breakdown of his entire internet drama and explained his side of the story. However, it was not received the way Birdie intended it to. The first thing Birdie brought up was his relationship with Kitty Dog. But rather than taking accountability for the explicit art he drew at just 12 years old, Birdie completely deflected, shifting the blame onto Kitty Dog and the internet at large.
12 years old, and I drew porn depicting pedophilia. And instead of being concerned or wondering if I was okay, everyone got mad at me for it, and it ended up being the first thing that canceled me in the public eye. Good times. You know, I was by Kitty Dog.
I don't know why everyone hates this person, but 15 minutes in and it's like they're trying to win the award for most insufferable person ever. Holy shit. He insisted that Kitty Dog, who at the time was 14 herself, Birdie into drawing NSFW themes with her. Birdie argued that even if he did comply with the inappropriate requests and demands made by Kitty Dog, it fell under grooming because he was at the age where he could not consent.
Had over me, being a massive creator that I looked up to, and I was not old enough to consent to these things. I was 12. Another thing to bring into consideration.
He constantly shifted blame, acknowledging that the community that once welcomed him with open arms would no longer accept any of his excuses.
In this situation, but at least acknowledge the impact this had on me as a kid. This led to the first time I got into big internet drama, and Kitty Dog completely threw me under the bus when this went down, despite encouraging me to draw art of me, but it was only because I was scared to say no. She started drawing NSFW art of me.
And when Kitty Dog did confront Birdie for having her NSFW art leaked by his friend 2 years later, he used the same 2-year gap to shift the blame onto Kitty Dog and excuse his own behavior.
Communicated to her myself that I was uncomfortable, but then again, I was scared to say no, and I didn't know how to communicate efficiently at that age, and I didn't intend for it to be leaked, nor did I anticipate that. She told me she was upset because the art was—
This still barely scratches the surface of the twisted stories Birdie had in store. Not only this, but Birdie would blame his parents for letting all of this happen.
And they even knew that I was being groomed, and they didn't do anything. It's funny, when they found out I was being groomed, albeit by a different guy, they grounded me for it. I don't know if you can tell, but my childhood is like cartoonish.
What really unsettled most viewers was this specific clip from the video.
Hasn't drawn porn. If that were illegal, we'd live in some sort of dystopian society where anyone under the age of 18 would be locked up. While this is funny to me now, this was—
Fontic and Birdie's romantic obsession and its portrayal in romance art was subjected to scrutiny even in 2017 and was a part of the huge Birdie drama. The animator took his time describing it with great details too. He started by aggressively labeling Fontic in an attempt to completely assassinate his former partner's character.
See, racist, pro-shipper, school shooter idolizer, abuser, and manipulator. There are already a ton of videos about this out there, so—
He then weaponized a borderline personality disorder diagnosis, claiming it made him a helpless victim to his own obsessive tendencies.
Disorder. Two significant symptoms of my disorder are a paralyzing fear of abandonment and unstable relationships. I was diagnosed recently, but Malachi was aware of these things regardless and utilized that back then. He was also my FP, or favorite person.
Despite previously admitting his psychosis was unconfirmed, Birdie now claimed he was officially diagnosed at a young age and accused Fontic of exploiting this illness to manipulate him.
I experienced that consistently, but because of him, I was in the middle of a bad psychotic break. During this time period, he actively worsened my delusions because it was fun to him. I need you to understand that he is not the victim in this situation.
But this was not all. Despite all of this, Birdie was equally involved neutralizing Fontic and archiving his NSFW artwork to keep for himself. Birdie alleged that Fontic's behavior escalated into constant stalking and hijacking his social media accounts to demand sexual favors.
For sexual favors, to terrorize me, and to intentionally try to worsen my mental state. Every time I said no to the sexual favors, he wouldn't respond to me for the rest of the day, which I know doesn't seem like a—
Yet, despite these severe allegations of abuse and manipulation, Birdie dated him a total of 8 times in those years.
Archiving all of his art and making videos about him constantly and sexualizing him, stealing his OCs, borderline stalking him, doxing him, and encouraging harassing him. This is something that I believe that I genuinely needed to be held accountable for, and thank you to all of you who did, but the harassment that I received because of this was not okay. I have apologized to him.
This entire saga of dating the wrong people and shifting blame on everyone but himself has been a consistent behavior Birdie has displayed over the years. The sequence of Birdie consenting to inappropriate art and Discord, conversations, and then denying the consent publicly, using his age and mental disorders, became unbearable for his followers. In the same video, Birdie also attempted to debunk one of the most disturbing allegations from 2017, but his explanation spectacularly backfired. Years prior, one of Birdie's exes leaked a screenshot of a conversation where Birdie was verbally admitting to actually abusing his pet ferret. Birdie initially expressed disgust and condemnation of such heinous acts.
I sexually abused my ferret. Of course, if this was true, that would be fucking deplorable, and holy shit, you'd have to send me to jail. Straight to jail. That would be it. You'd have to lock me up and throw away the key, guys. But there's a shit ton of context missing from this.
But later admitted that he was groomed into doing the deed.
Groomed into it when I was 13 years old. I don't have proof of this because I lost the DMs with my groomer.
And instead of holding himself accountable for such a depraved act, the creator launched into a string of excuses to justify his actions.
Obviously, but this was the worst, and I don't want to talk about it for that long publicly. Another thing I'd like to point out, which is almost as important as the context.
Birdie not only admitted to subjecting his pet animal to harm, but also owned up to the allegations that he was neglecting his pet too.
Care for them. I didn't know how to clean up after her, I didn't know what food she was supposed to eat, I didn't know how to hold her. I didn't even know that she wasn't supposed to live in her cage, and
this neglect was apparently not his, but his parents' fault too.
Prepared for it. Despite all of this, I researched ferrets more as I grew up.
People had also noticed him drawing himself in inappropriate positions with minor My Little Pony characters. Allegations of Birdie interacting with minors also made rounds on the internet for quite some time. But what really confirmed these allegations was Birdie's own confession in his YouTube video. At one point, the then 16-year-old creator openly admitted to dating a 13-year-old. The narration of this incident, however, was very odd. Rather than acknowledging the inappropriate age gap, Birdie blamed the 13-year-old for forcing him into dating them.
Lucid, but in all honesty, I think I was taken advantage of. I'll come back to this point again once I finish explaining the full sequence.
According to a Discord chat screenshot, the underage friend, who went by the name Draggy, wanted to pursue something romantic with Birdie. Birdie, as the older person, could have easily dismissed the situation and avoided any internet drama. But instead of turning them down, he told the child that he found them emotionally mature for their age and would not mind keeping them as a partner.
But because of the mental state I was in, I was unable to make the right decision. They were entirely aware of the mental state I was in. I addressed my worries with us dating, but they insisted that they wanted to date me, so I agreed. Our relationship lasted less than a week, and nothing of a romantic.
And his explanation for the relationship only frustrated his viewers more. Once again, Birdie weaponized his BPD and emotional instability as an excuse for getting involved with a minor.
It's gonna feel drastically different for me.
He also insisted that this relationship was too short-lived to be labeled grooming. While Birdie suggested that nothing romantic had occurred during their relationship, discussions and drawings uncovered by the internet said otherwise.
And immediately afterwards, they began spreading allegations in Birdie drama circles. I'll admit, because of the weird-ass circumstances,
Screenshots of inappropriate conversations and suggestive artwork involving the 13-year-old surfaced. People within the animation meme community confronted Birdie over the allegations, hoping for an explanation. None ever came. And the ones he provided in the video sounded more like excuses, which ended up being his followers' last straw. I regret defending you. I really thought you changed. The criticism and hatred against Birdie grew. People stopped believing in his statements because nothing he said aligned with his actions. The empire he had built using his sob stories was crushed to rubble by Birdie himself. Birdie had hoped that his detailed explanations of his past actions and his attempt at accountability would make the art community accept him back. And when that did not happen, he decided to use another tactic to get the internet to side with him. On September 15th, 2024, Birdie uploaded the 32-minute video, "My roommate groomed a 14-year-old. I need help." Curious and concerned, hundreds of thousands of people click on it. During this time, Birdie had been living with another YouTube meme art animator, CineBears03. Now, Cinebear, at the time 20, was a very popular creator with more than 500,000 subscribers on the platform. She and Birdie had been friends for a long time, and when the abuse back at home allegedly got extremely bad for Birdie, Cinebear offered him a space in her apartment. In the video, Birdie alleged that Cinebear had been exchanging inappropriate messages with minors.
She's a predator. All of this behavior is predatory and
the victim in this case was Eno, a 14-year-old girl, whom Cinebear was asking to make NSFW art.
With the username Eno, and they'd been talking for 6 months. Cine sent Eno, including sadomasochistic. She encouraged them to drop.
The story took an even darker turn when Birdie released a Google document exposing Cine's predatory conversations with her victim. Unfortunately, Eno was not Cine's only victim. It was an entire loop. Apparently, Cine had done something similar in 2023, which Birdie caught the wind of. She was involved in preying on another 17-year-old teenager too.
She has a pattern of doing this. I think it was almost a year ago now, Cine was in contact with someone with the username Pee-wee when she was 19 and they were 17. And she did all of this.
He confronted her about it. Cine apologized and promised that she wouldn't repeat this behavior, only to break that promise and prey on a much younger child.
And said promised it would never happen again. So the fact that she could acknowledge what she did wrong in that situation goes to show that she knew exactly what she was doing this time.
According to Birdie, he had no idea all this was going on. These allegations were just a tip of the iceberg. Birdie went on to explain that not only Cine was involved with underage kids, she also had a history of inappropriately touching him on multiple occasions.
Like how big and squishy it is and how she wants a boyfriend with an like mine, and she would constantly sit and grab it. And I'm gonna be honest, I consented to this because I've never had an IRL friend before and I didn't.
This video, which itself was just a traction tactic, worked in Birdie's favor initially. All attention shifted to Cine, and she ended up losing a huge chunk of her YouTuber following in very little time. Cine later followed this expose video with an apology video. In the upload, Cine could be heard crying and extremely shaken by the situation.
My content. I'm sorry to the victim. I don't want to say their name. I want to protect their identity.
She initially apologized for her actions, expressing deep regret over the fallout. By this point, she and Birdie were no longer living together, and their once close relationship had entirely ended. By this time, Birdie and Cine had parted ways. They were no longer living together, and Cine appeared very heartbroken by it.
I feel so sorry for Jack. When he learned what I had done, he cried, and he doesn't feel safe living with me anymore. I've hurt him so much. I don't know why I did.
The situation accelerated a few months later when Cinebear posted another, longer video titled My Response Part 1. This ended up making her lose every chance at redemption she previously could have had. In the video, Cine completely altered her story and retracted her apology.
Completely convinced that I was a predator and that I needed intervention. I'm realizing I might not even have a clear understanding of what is. I believed I was a child because Jack told me I did, and I believed him because I trusted him.
According to her, she was manipulated into believing that she was a predator by her best friend Birdie. She insisted her original apology was coerced under pressure. All the accountability and guilt she carried not too long ago had disappeared into thin air. She no longer believed that she had done something wrong. Instead, she chose to blame her victim, Eno, and this infuriated the entire internet. This is genuinely disturbing. I saw so many people praising her for telling the truth. She's a predator. She groomed a child. She's not sorry for her actions. She's sorry that she got caught and knew what she was doing. Everyone turned against Cine. She was the final villain in the story who couldn't have come to light had it not been for Birdie. Against all odds, Birdie had successfully rewritten his public image, transforming the community's relentless outrage into widespread sympathy and support. His followers were standing up for him. Fucking hell, you need to stay away. Have you contacted the police or gone down to a station? Because I think you should. Now that she's been outed, she has essentially lost everything. And people will do drastic things when they have nothing else to lose. The expose video that Birdie had posted went viral, gaining more than 500,000 views in a very short time. All the negative attention was on Cinebear. The animation meme community despised her for doing what she did. She has fucking actually lost her fucking mind, like she might unironically be going through a fucking psychotic break. She is not well and needs to be fucking put away for a while, and I mean this in a Darog way. Lock that fucker up forever so she can't hurt anyone again. The situation was completely in Birdie's favor, so he decided to use this opportunity in his favor and attached a GoFundMe link to his video and requested viewers for financial help. Why, one wonders. It was because Birdie had lost the only house he was staying in with Cindy. His abusive parents, by his account, would never accept him back in the family.
Talk to my family later. I highly doubt I'll be able to stay with any of them because, you know, I have nobody else. I have nowhere else to go.
Birdie claimed the expose made it impossible to continue living with Cinnabar, alleging she had consistently made him feel unsafe through inappropriate physical contact. On top of that, Birdie had mobility issues and used a wheelchair to move around. He claimed that getting a traditional job to support himself was impossible. He presented crowdfunding as his only option, pleading with his audience to donate so he could afford to rent his own apartment and escape the toxic environment.
If you want to help me get to a safe place, I've set up a GoFundMe. I've never done this before, so hope I'm doing it right. All expenses will go towards me moving to another place.
And since everything was clearly in shambles for Birdie, the internet decided to help him out. The GoFundMe link was spread all across the internet. Thousands of people donated all they could. The campaign's original goal was $10,000, but Birdie managed to raise over $11,000 in a single day, more than enough to secure a new place. Just 2 days after the video went viral, Birdie updated his followers that he was leaving Cindy's apartment. Meanwhile, Birdie continued his relentless public campaign against Cinnabar, tweeting about how thrilled he was to watch her lose her friends and colleagues in real time. Birdie seemed highly confident that his expose had permanently destroyed his former roommate's reputation. But as all of this was unfolding, Cindy was already preparing a massive counter-expose of her own. In a follow-up video, she expressed how deeply scared for her life she was.
And late into my shift, I saw that he made a Twitter thread. He openly bragged about stealing my friends from me, and he told me to live and suffer, and he called me a p***o. I didn't know what to think of him anymore. I didn't know what he was capable of. I didn't know what he was willing to do. So I went into a delusional, paranoid state. I had to leave work early, but I couldn't go home. I was convinced that if I went home, then someone would be at my apartment and they would.
Then another Twitter rampage began when Birdie started crashing out over his pet cat Scottcrope, who he consistently alleged that Cindy had stolen. In response to these robbery allegations, Cindy posted another YouTube video, and things only go downhill from there on. She revealed that the cat Birdie claimed she stole was actually at the home of one of Birdie's own friends.
My kitten. Jack is claiming that I have possession of Squirp, that I successfully took her from him, but I don't have her. I have no idea where my cat is, and I don't know if he's even aware of where she is.
Cindy also accused Birdie of being a neglectful owner and not looking after his cats properly. In a video, she could be seen showing her apartment, elaborating that the cats were safer and in a cleaner space under her supervision.
Not me. I've stepped up as a caretaker ever since he left. My apartment is much cleaner. Stupid is losing weight after a long stretch of being overweight. I'm giving her more variety with her.
Cindy had suspicion that Birdie was behind the cat's sudden disappearance, which ultimately turned out to be true. The cat Scrappy was indeed in Birdie's friend Izzy's possession, who was also known as Queen on Twitter. Not only did Birdie break into Cindy's house to steal the cat, he took a bunch of her personal possessions with him too. This included a flash drive, a monitor, and her jewelry.
Any items that Jack stole from me when he left, and when he later entered my apartment after I changed the locks. And she has actively refused to give me my cat.
And instead of returning the cat to either Birdie or Cindy, Queen decided to keep the cat for some time. Queen did eventually return the cat to Cindy, but it came with another massive expose. Queen decided to expose both Birdie and Cindy for keeping their pets in a filthy, litter-filled environment. These claims were not unfounded either. After moving out of Cinnabar's apartment, Birdie had temporarily stayed at Queen's house, and rather than respecting his host's space, Birdie allegedly trashed the room he was staying in, leaving it entirely unkempt. Queen posted the pictures of his trashed room on Twitter to let the world know what she was dealing with. The mess wasn't limited to just clutter. The photos revealed heavily stained, unwashed bedsheets covered in what appeared to be drops of blood. All of this drama inadvertently revealed a massive discrepancy in Birdie's story. He wasn't living in a rented apartment of his own. By this time, a few months had passed since the GoFundMe campaign. The money thousands of people had donated for his good had completely disappeared from the picture. Instead of securing his own place, Birdie was couch surfing at friends' houses and allegedly destroying their property. Questions about the donations started surfacing. I'm shocked anyone ever took a look at Birdie and saw someone who could be trusted with thousands of dollars worth of donations. It later turned out that he had only paid $800 in rent to another roommate named Julie. In the screenshot of his retrieved conversation with Queen, Birdie could be seen talking about a package that he had sent to her place. Do you also have the package that I sent to your place? There should be one more derpy plushie. Birdie hadn't used the $11,000 for independent housing. Instead, he was using the donation money to purchase an extensive collection of My Little Pony plushies. This infuriated the people who had nothing but goodwill for Birdie. Thousands of people had donated their own money to help him get back on his feet, only to watch him squander it to feed his personal obsessions. I regret helping you. I absolutely hate myself on how I thought I was helping you to get away from someone dangerous when turns out I was helping another dangerous person. I truly apologize to the victims for my wrongdoing. Birdie, you should just leave out of the internet forever and take big responsibility. People felt wronged, and soon Birdie started receiving messages from donors on his Twitter account. They were demanding a refund. They had every right to do so. But instead of owning up to his mistake, Birdie repeated the same pattern of turning down the confrontation and taking the smart way out. He had his PR manager intercept the direct messages, systematically shutting down every single request for a refund. And to this day, Birdie has refused to provide any explanation or accounting for the $11,000 he took from his audience. The internet had given him one final chance at redemption, and he repaid that trust with a massive financial scam. The loop of endless criticism and distrust resumed. After the GoFundMe scam, his viewers refused to accept him back, and noticing how everyone had turned against him, Birdie disappeared off the internet completely and has not returned to this day. Okay, I'm sick of being this week's hot juicy drama and having the dehumanization and demonization of myself so widely normalized again. PPLR scraping the bottom of the barrel for rumors. I'm leaving for a bit. Everybody get your shit. Together, this is just like 2017. Time is a flat circle. Birdie was someone whose life depended on the internet. To him, it was breathing, a place he believed would provide endless cover for his actions. He spent years spinning the exact same narrative, a story where somebody else was always responsible. It would either be a parent or an ex, sometimes a friend, and other times a roommate. And when none of these would fit the narrative he wanted to build, he simply weaponized his mental health diagnoses to excuse his behavior. Also, Birdie is a great example of the consequences of 1. Bad parenting, 2. Unrestricted internet access at a young age, and 3. Internet drama, grooming, and bullying. From his perspective, the community he supposedly relied on ever since he was a kid villainized him. But is that really the truth? With every new controversy came a new justification, another elaborate reason why he was actually the victim. But eventually, the excuses became impossible to separate from the person making them. The allegations changed, the people involved changed, the platforms changed, yet the pattern never did. Time and time again, Birdie found himself at the center of the very situations he insisted had simply happened to him. And when the internet gave him one final chance in 2024, many believed things would finally be different. Instead, the same cycle repeated itself. Today, Birdie has vanished from the internet once again. The $11,000 he took was never refunded, and the people he manipulated never received an apology. All they got was complete silence. And with that, one of the most controversial figures in the animation meme community quietly faded away from the spotlight, leaving behind a legacy defined entirely by the damage he caused. Cristali, an animator who built a massive following off cute characters, colorful edits, and animation memes. But behind the screen, there were accusations, harassment, tracing and stealing artwork, a cult of young fans, and hundreds of screenshots that told a very different story than the one his audience believed. Because Cristali wasn't who people thought he was. He wasn't a teenage girl. He wasn't even who he claimed to be at all. His real name was David Alejandro Pascual Argueta, and in 2019, he was arrested. Authorities charged him with charges involving explicit content, with reports stating that he had asked for inappropriate photos from multiple fans, at least 8 victims. What started as harmless animation memes quickly turned into one of the most disturbing cases to come out of that community. This is the story of how an online persona fooled thousands of people, how an entire fan base was manipulated, and how it all eventually led to real-world consequences. Now, if you don't know who this person is, that's honestly not surprising, because to be fair, he disappeared from the internet a long time ago. His accounts are gone, his content is wiped, and unless you were around during that era of animation memes, you probably missed him completely. But the reason this story still matters isn't just because of what he did, it's because people like him probably still exist, just under different names, different avatars, different audiences, and Cristali, or more accurately, David Alejandro, is one of the clearest examples of how easily someone can build an identity online and hide behind it. because he didn't just have one name, he had many. Valdrox X, Chantilly Shy, Jade, Cristali. He actually had a ludicrously long list of names that he went by on the internet that were all named after the OCS he created. However, before any of the animation fame, he actually started out as a small gaming creator under the name Valdrox X, even referring to himself as a grade A loser. While almost all of his original pages have been deleted or disabled, the internet never really forgets. Thankfully, some people have archived parts of his content over the years. There are re-uploads, old clips, and fragments of videos that were preserved, such as on channels like Cristali Rooploads and a few other scattered accounts. Some of the videos on these pages are a little questionable, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things, to be honest, because believe us when we say you are going to see much worse. One video in particular stands out, an old Q&A where he talks about his favorite creator. It seems harmless, just a casual interaction with fans, but it will become more important later in the story. You will notice that he's speaking in Spanish in all of his old videos. That is because he was a Guatemalan YouTuber. His content back then was heavily inspired by other creators, particularly Fernando Flo, almost to the point of imitation. But that phase didn't last long. In 2017, he pivoted from gaming to animation memes. Now, for those of you who don't know, animation memes aren't really memes in the traditional sense. They are short, usually looping animations that are shared online for humor, creativity, or style. They often remix popular characters or original creations and can include music, funny actions, or unexpected twists. Think of them as mini animated jokes or sketches that spread quickly through platforms like YouTube. And when David pivoted to animation memes, that's when everything changed. He began posting short, stylized animations across platforms like DeviantArt, YouTube, and Instagram, quickly tapping into a community that was already exploding in popularity, especially among younger audiences. But along with that shift came something else, a completely new identity. He started presenting himself as a 16-year-old girl, and he even changed his channel's name to Cristali, and later to Cristali and Zafiro after his two main OCs. These weren't just characters, they were the brand, the identity, the reason people followed him. As his content spread, so did his audience. Within months, his numbers started climbing rapidly, reaching thousands of subscribers in a very short time, and eventually exploding to tens of thousands by 2018. From what we were able to find, Cristali uploaded a video in late 2017 called Cristali Zafiro Rewind. In that video, he mentioned that he had gained about 1,000 followers. By January 2018, his follower count had grown to around 6,000. Screenshots from later in the year, around October 2018, show his audience had exploded to 80,000 followers and then continued to grow, reaching 90,000 and even 100,000. But even during this rise, there were signs that something wasn't right. Even though he removed almost all traces of himself as a 19-year-old man and presented himself as a 16-year-old girl, he still left some videos online that showed him playing serious and questionable games that involved MLP characters in disturbing situations. And it's actually quite horrifying. When we started looking into this particular game, we found entire websites, galleries, and portfolios dedicated to this kind of content. It was disturbing and, to be honest, truly traumatizing to see how much of it exists and how easily it spreads online. However, at the time, most people ignored these videos, but as the time went on, more and more viewers began to suspect that his persona might not be real. The reason he likely decided to hide behind the avatar of a teenage girl is simple. It allowed him to build trust with his audience, cater to a younger and often more vulnerable fan base, and manipulate his fans without anyone questioning him. He also used some seriously unethical methods to achieve his rapid growth. He relied on sub-bots and fake endorsement accounts to make his YouTube channel appear much larger than it actually was. From the very beginning of his rebrand, he even hired teenage girls to work as voice artists for his videos. Of course, he didn't give them credit. It made sense from his perspective, since he didn't want anyone to know that these girls were providing the voices. He wanted it to appear as if it were him. He even uploaded a video titled, "I Read Your Comments," where fans complimented the voice work, and instead of telling the truth, he accepted the praise as if it were his own.
Thanks to Delphi, to Chicken the Nugget, to Ari Rainbow, to Kitty Cloud, to Goldina, to Rusty Willis Free, to Hydra Dragon, to Sylvian Girl, to Pepper Tea, and to Midnight Cloud the Cat. I send love to all of you and see you in the next video.
But this later became a controversy. In 2018, an artist known as Blue Artist Draws decided she didn't want to stay a secret anymore. She wanted the world to know that she had done voice work for Cristali. David's response was diabolical. He immediately began threatening her, even though she was also a minor. He claimed he knew her location and warned that he would find her. He sent her a message saying, "At this moment, I will fix some papers and I will leave my country to look for you." Well, this at least looks pretty incriminating. However, long before that though, his mask was slowly unraveling. People started to notice disturbing patterns in the way he responded to criticism. If we had to describe his behavior in a straightforward trajectory, it goes like this. It started with NSFW content that he claimed was safe for children, then escalated to paywalled traced artwork, followed by outbursts and aggressive responses to criticism, and eventually spiraled into full-blown predatory behavior and the creation of a cult-like fanbase. So, let's start with the first signs, the content that set the stage for everything that followed. David's content was widely regarded as disturbing and unsettling. While he claimed his animations and artwork were child-friendly, he consistently over-sexualized his main character, Zafiro, and tagged her videos with Furry, boobs, R34, and Zafiro. Some of his other titles included tags such as and Loli. In this Patreon post, he wrote, "Wolfichu, no clothes, a beautiful wolfie teen Loli, and sexy for you." He also animated Zafiro twerking multiple times and drew softcore of Zafiro. Most of his animations included provocative movements, and in one video, he even inserted cryptic and disturbing messages and symbols. In the full version of his floppy ears meme, pausing at a certain moment reveals a hidden message that reads, "Stupid memes, I have your attention. Share this video now or die." Clearly an attempt to appear edgy and shocking. Just look at the full version of the video yourself. So yeah, there is that. And he also created a Patreon where he sold fully fledged explicit artwork. Again, on his Patreon, he wrote, "Find the undressed version without Rosali's bra now in my Patreon just for $15. Rosali naked, showing her boobs and all her body. Join and get 60 plus NSFW pictures of Wolfichi, Ninazan, and more." So yes, extremely creepy. However, the issue wasn't only the content itself, but the overall quality and the fact that he didn't even draw these himself. Many have criticized his art as poorly executed and copied from others. His animations often appeared stiff and lazy due to tracing and ineffective image manipulation. David repeatedly traced and reused art from other creators, including YouTubers like Rosali, Wolfichu, and Stariat, profiting from work that wasn't his own. Even his main character, Cristali, was traced from Rosali's original OC. Remember the video we showed you where he talked about his favorite artist? He talked about Rosali in that clip, and he also had her pictures pinned to his wall in his bedroom, which is creepy as well. On top of that, he was extremely manipulative. He constantly told his fans he was trustworthy and a good guy, cultivating loyalty while concealing unethical behavior. We mean, it is just so traumatizing listening to him tell his fans that they should trust him, and not to mention, he also altered completely appropriate artworks from other creators, changing them according to his own imagination, often removing clothes and drawing boobs and ass over them. However, his biggest controversy, as we mentioned before, came from Rosali. Since David constantly traced her artwork, she reached out to him and asked him to stop. Given the circumstances, it's not surprising that the conversation went poorly. David became extremely defensive, claiming that under YouTube's rules, specifically Rule 34, he was allowed to copy her art, and that if he didn't, someone else would. Not only did he refuse to stop tracing her work, but he also began sending her inappropriate content he drew through direct messages, effectively harassing her. Rosali said, "He is tracing and he is earning money on it, which is a problem, but he is also abusive. He blackmailed me on DeviantArt. He turned my OC into to intimidate me." He even claimed he knew her IP address and used that to threaten her. Because of this behavior and his ongoing outbursts, DeviantArt eventually banned his account. According to David's Adramtica page, he stalked Rosal and drew over her pictures, tracing the clothes off the character and drawing out of the pictures. When Rosali told him to stop, he spammed her with non-consensual of her OC that he traced. When asked again to stop, he reportedly blackmailed her and said that he would continue to trace her work even if she deleted her account. He would also gain her IP and personal information. Other creators also stepped in to expose him. One of the main people actively working to hold him accountable was an Amino user named Emi Matsuno, a name you should remember because it will come up repeatedly throughout this story. There were other creators as well. For example, a creator known as Naoni uploaded many videos about Cristali by May 2018. Although her account has since been privatized, many of her videos remain archived and we were able to recover a lot of them. Most of Naoni's content focused on exposing David's tracing of artwork and also mentioned allegations of grooming, something we will discuss in more detail shortly.
Hello
Hello everybody, it's me, Nani, and yes, this is another video about Cristali. Nani, why the frig are you making another video about Cristali? Okay, look, making this video has not even crossed my mind until I saw some people complaining about Cristali on my personal Facebook feed. I was met with is the fact that he doesn't use his own OCs, or not only does he use his own OCs, but he uses other people's OCs in his graphic artwork for profit. He listed examples, and they include Rosalie, Wolfie Stariat.
So yeah, by mid-2018, just a few months after his initial rise to fame, David was already starting to spiral. And one thing to note here is that, unlike many other online personalities we cover on this channel, he wasn't around for very long. He entered the scene in 2017, and by April 2019, he was already off the internet and behind the bars. However, in that short time though, he managed to do a lot. As backlash against him grew, his responses to criticism became increasingly disturbing. When people began pointing out his hypocrisy, tracing, profiting off other people's work, and harassment, he had the audacity to reply in the comments with insults. He called people little rats and even suggested that their fathers probably touched them or that they were struggling in school. In his own words, there will always be little rats out there commenting and saying no, that this is false. But maybe their dad touches them, they suffer in school, or they are a retard. However, eventually he deleted some of those comments and posted an apology. In his message, he wrote, "I am sorry, but I tried to make this a family and I like them for supporting me, but there are people who do not understand it and only look for visits and subscribers using my name, leaving me as trash." Now, this was a tactic he used often, calling his fans his family to manipulate them and make them feel loyal. Also, accusing people for using him for clout. He did this to almost all of his victims. Regarding tracing, he added, "To the question of whether I copy others, yes, I copied other artists, but that was when I started, and I did it to learn. But today I showed you what my true art is. The truth is that I am making a change, but it's hard for me because I'm acquiring Parkinson's." Now, for those who don't know, Parkinson's is a serious disease that is difficult to diagnose and affects motor control. Many people pointed out that David hadn't actually drawn anything original in a long time and had been copying heads and poses for his main characters, which suggested laziness rather than illness. He eventually deleted the apology, leaving his behavior and excuses as part of the growing controversy around him. But even more disturbing details soon started surfacing. In May 2018, a creator named Lima Cat uploaded a video titled, "Cristali asked me for and sent me of his OC." Lima Cat was only 13 years old at the time, and in her video, she showed screenshots of conversations between herself and David. Conversations that were completely inappropriate for a 19-year-old to be having with a 13-year-old. Here are some of the screenshots she showed in her video. There is David calling her beautiful, asking when she will send him her videos, him calling her a cheat girl, whatever that means. Then there are screenshots of him asking her to do specific poses for her, asking her not to cover anything in her pictures and daring her to take pictures in the shower, asking her to remove her bra once again. And then there are conversations where she told him that she's 13 and he says, "It doesn't matter, why do you ask?" In Spanish, he said "por qué pregunta," which means "why do you ask?" And then he says "no importa girl," which means "it doesn't matter." There are also screenshots where she tells David that she is uncomfortable, but he still insists and asks her to trust him. He also asks her to send nudes, asking Lima to remove her and panties. We mean, there are just so many screenshots and each one is equally daunting. However, the most disgusting thing about these screenshots was this. His OC porn, which he sent to her. Lima said, "He asked me before how old I was and I said 13, and yet he still sent it." At the time, she believed he was 20 to 23 years old, but records now show he was born in January 1998, making him 20 in May 2018, although some arrest details listed him as 19. According to Lima Cat, the situation began with a previous collaboration they had worked on together. David allegedly used this project to manipulate her, holding it over her head like leverage, often making her feel guilty and accusing her of using him for attention or more views. Lima Cat eventually exposed him, and her testimony became a key part of the evidence against him. She posted this video on May 22nd, 2018, writing, "I was wrong. I am so sorry for starting this. I never should have. He is a pervert and he's going to prison for this. I got the authorities in this." So yeah, long before his arrest, his victims were already trying to report him. Following this, Naoni, who played a major role in documenting David's actions along with Peachy Cub and Emi Matsuno, also made a video highlighting this incident.
A few other things have come to my attention, such as Cristali sending graphic images and asking for graphic images for people that are underage, even though he is 20 years of age. There's one girl who says that he allegedly did these things. There's a video about it. I'll link the video to you. She says that she's 13 and he's 20 or something like that, and he's been asking for nudes or like dirty drawings and stuff like that, which is, I guess, technically illegal because he's over the age of 20. So yeah, there's that, of course, and of course that's terrible in itself.
Up until then, many people had criticized David for tracing and creating creepy art, but no one knew the full extent of his actions. As more screenshots surfaced, it became clear that he was not only a manipulative adult online, but also a groomer who exploited his young, impressionable audience through collaboration and personal contact. 2 other victims of his were connected to a platform called Amino, a community-based app where people can create and join fan groups, support creators, or run hate pages. On Amino, there were 2 groups related to David. One group opposed him and was part of Cristali Report Amino, collecting evidence against him, and another group was hardcore fans calling themselves Droxists, who treated David like a leader and followed his every command. The Droxists even went so far as to cut the letter V into their arms as an oath of loyalty to David, whom they called Lord Valdrox. However, instead of discouraging this behavior, David encouraged it. He sent his army of followers after Emi Matsuno, who was a key member of Cristali Report Amino. She was brutally harassed, bullied, and publicly shamed, with her personal information even being released online by David himself, all while she was only 14 years old. David basically reached out to his supporters and gave them an important task from Lord Valdrox. The post on the Amino related to Emi Matsuno read, "We have been requested to attack Emi Matsuno. If you are her friend, that's too bad. Droxism comes first. Valdrox's requests are commands, and we will follow them. All of you will screen record reporting her Instagram and YouTube channels." So yeah, you guys can clearly see how dedicated and fervent his fans were. The harassment escalated further. Loyal fans drew art of Zafiro ing Emi, and David reportedly enjoyed this content. They called her ugly, made fun of her, and striked her videos. They also started spreading information about her personal life. And then David, very discreetly, leaked her private information by hiding it in the background of his video titled, "Bye Lena Problems." Emi was obviously shocked by this. She posted about it relentlessly, tried to fight back, and even asked for help multiple times. The situation became so extreme that Emi posted a concerning message stating that David could drive her to suicide. She said, "Congratulations, Cristali. My channel was banned for 2 weeks. I hope you are happy. I want you to know that you are the cause of my suicide. YouTube is the only thing that keeps my dead soul alive. Thanks for destroying it." So yeah, people were immediately concerned after this post, and understandably so. However, thankfully, she did not harm herself and returned online shortly after, but the incident highlighted the danger of David's manipulation and his blind army of followers. Now, that being said, we would like to pivot to something important. Within the Droxis, certain members had key roles. A member called Coffee Beans received personal instructions from David to relay to the group, while another user, Pankake, was believed to be the creator of Cristali Support Amino. However, in 2019, Pankake publicly shared screenshots on Cristali Report Amino, proving that David had been romantically involved with her when she was just a 12-year-old. Pankake wrote, "I am no longer a fan of Valdrox, and I'm really sorry for all the stupid things I have done." She also shared screenshots as evidence, and the conversations were deeply disturbing. In those messages, David asked her if she had told anyone about them, especially after people began questioning whether he was dating a 12-year-old. There were screenshots of him asking her if she was a virgin, and when she said that no one wanted to do it with her, he replied saying he would want to, and then proceeded to ask her if they could keep this relationship a secret. The secrecy, the emotional manipulation, and the way he positioned himself as someone she could rely on all point to a pattern. It shows that he was aware that what he was doing was wrong. Instead of stopping, he chose to hide it and continue. With Pancake, Emi Matsuno, Rosali, and Lima Cat, that makes at least 4 confirmed victims whom he either harassed, sent inappropriate content to, or pressured for personal images. However, the list does not end there. Another creator, known as Cream the Kitten, later also known as Caster Star, came forward with her own experience. She uploaded a video in February 2019 titled, "Exposing Valdrox Studios, aka Cristali and Zafiro Toon, aka Chantilly Shy." That video is still available online today and provides further insight into his behavior. Now, let's start off with some of the claims she made. She stated that he asked her for private images under the excuse of using them as references, a tactic he had reportedly used before. She also said that he has some files on his computer named Child Flesh, which contains a lot of child pee. She said that he is collecting child pee, and also accused him of drawing underage from tracing MLP hentai, make only slightly longer. At this point, it was no longer just isolated accusations. It was a pattern. He also apparently told her that he was not an adult, but was actually 16 years old. He kept insisting that she send him nudes even though she said she was not comfortable doing it. He said, and quote, "In this moment, I need a good reference by a good, beautiful girl." There was basically a significant amount of proof presented in Cream the Kitten's video, including multiple screenshots. What stood out the most was that her experience followed the exact same pattern that had already been reported by others. And again, the list of victims didn't stop there. Another creator, Peachy Cub, also came forward and uploaded a video sharing her experience, along with screenshots as evidence. According to her, the interaction between her and David began when she had done a cosplay of Cristali. Someone told David that she might be a boy, which led him to message her and ask about her identity. Once he confirmed that she was, in fact, a girl, his behavior shifted and it followed a now very familiar pattern. He started by acting friendly. He called her his friend, flattered her, and pretended to care about her. But gradually, the conversation turned inappropriate. He began asking for pictures, sending explicit content himself, and eventually pressuring her to recreate what he sent. And after being manipulated and reassured over a long period of time, Peachy Cub eventually gave in and sent those images. Later on, according to her, those private photos were leaked from Cristali's chats by someone trusted. She wrote, "I woke up to so many messages on the 11th of February. I don't know who, but someone I trusted leaked screenshots from my and Cristali's chats. I am still not sure who leaked 2 of my nudes or the screenshots, but hopefully they can tell me one day." The exposing account soon got deleted after the incident. However, what's especially disturbing is that, like many of the other victims, she blamed herself for what happened. Victims like Pancake and Lima Cat expressed similar feelings, guilt, confusion, and responsibility for something they were manipulated into. In her video description, Peachy Cub even wrote that she didn't see it as entirely his fault and blamed herself for sending the images and not listening to previous warnings. But looking at the situation clearly, it highlights something deeply troubling. A young teenager was made to feel responsible, while an adult was the one initiating, manipulating, and pressuring her into those actions. And that's what makes this entire situation so alarming. And like we said, the list is never ending. However, this would be the last victim of Cristali that we would be talking about, and this last victim is someone called Temper Flash. This victim is also someone Nauni talked about in her videos. And other than that, Nauni also started a whole reporting system for reporting Cristali to the authorities, and also did some research to find his real name in the university that he studied at. However, coming back to Temper Flash, according to the screenshots Temper shared, she actually met David, aka Cristali, through Instagram, and he responded to her very nicely, which is what he does when he finds young, impressionable fans. So he and Temper actually did a collab. However, soon after, David started taking advantage of her and started asking for more. When Temper was going through some family problems, he supported her and tried to seem nice, saying things like, "I love you, you do not bother me, and your problems are my problems." However, when they quote-unquote started dating, he would ask her for her address and then send her pictures of her house from Google Maps and try to calculate how long it would take for him to reach her. He would also ask for her passwords and basically try to control her. This went on for a long time until Temper told David that she couldn't continue because her parents found out about the relationship. We also found an interview this creator called Moonbeanie did with Temper Flash, and it shows some other inappropriate pictures of himself that he sent to Temper.
Oh boy, thank God these are censored. This is a proof of him sending you stuff that definitely should have not been sent to a. These were from Nani's DMs that you did gave me.
Yeah. He sent me an inappropriate video of him taking things off, and there was really cringy elevator music in the background.
What the hell? Dude, that's messed up, what the hell?
And with all of this, things were at a boiling point. People were aware of his actions. There were simply too many similar stories to ignore, and they all followed a clear pattern. People started mass reporting Cristali's account, and it was around this time that he started to frequently change his username and profile picture. He also started deleting a lot of content from his profile to prevent people from finding his original account and reporting it. Even his own sponsor, who very ironically sponsored him for a family safe app, something meant for the exact opposite of what David was known for, took action. It was a platform designed for the safety of children on the internet, and when they found out who Cristali really was, they realized they had made a huge mistake by sponsoring him. They even made a post urging people to report him. And so, with all of this, Cristali was almost finished. It was only a matter of time until the combined efforts of the internet and the victims led to April 11th, 2019, the day David was arrested. According to this article by Monsters and Critics, Guatemalan police authorities arrested him for producing and selling child which he obtained by using his anime characters Cristali, Zafiro, and Jade. He was arrested during a raid on his home in Villanueva on Thursday, April 11th, 2019. The article read, "Authorities are also said to have seized computer equipment and cell phones as evidence." However, it wasn't until August 2020 that he was sentenced, which was 3 years in prison. A lot of people thought that this punishment was very light, given the crimes he had committed. However, the internet and the entire meme community were still rejoicing in his exit from the internet, which they had worked so hard for. As for where Cristali is right now, we don't know for sure. However, we do know that the offense for which he was arrested probably banned him from social media forever. So it's not like even if he comes back online, he would be under the same name. However, a lot of people on Reddit have mentioned that other creators seem to be copying his style. And this has made people question whether they could actually be Cristali under a different name. A creator on YouTube called Mizuno Melody has been pointed out by many people for using the same art style, designs, and even a similar color palette to create her art. And a lot of people believe that it could be Cristali in disguise. However, there has been no confirmation that Cristali has returned to the internet. Nonetheless, for a few years, there was a very active group of people on the internet who called themselves KVA, short for Keep Valdrox Alive, where they posted remakes of his art and claimed that they would keep his work alive and running, and also pledged not to go away anytime soon. Even then, a lot of people argued that Cristali might be in the background, pulling the reins of his so-called Droxist army. But like we said, the era of Cristali has since been gone, and he has sunk into the shadows. But that doesn't mean that more people like him don't exist online. With this, we would like to end today's video. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to cover more cases like this in the meme and art community. This is GovKDF, an animator who is known for making Roblox animations for his young audience. He built an audience of over 33,000 subscribers by presenting himself as someone entirely different, a shy, harmless guy who constantly needed to be comforted. He claimed to have one of the rarest medical conditions in the world where he could not even drink water and had to rely on milk every day. He even told his audience that his own brother had spent years actively trying to kill him. He even claimed a mysterious entity haunted his existence and it could influence his life and body. Thousands of children believed every word he said. But after years of keeping up that image, a few of his own biggest fans started decoding everything he said. The more they talked, the more they realized they had all been told different stories. And the deeper they dug, the more they uncovered years of hidden Discord messages, disturbing interactions, and a side of GovKDF that almost nobody had seen before. This is the story of GovKDF, who went from one of animation YouTube's most sympathetic creators to one of its darkest scandals. At first, GovKDF doesn't look much different from thousands of other animation creators online. Also known as Governor Bosterman, he is a 23-year-old animator born on December 7, 2002. He comes from New York, USA. Gov has a YouTube channel where he built his audience through animation memes and Roblox-style videos, mostly using all motion shapes. He presents himself through a simple mascot, which is a red and black blocky character. This character shows up throughout his content. Nothing about that sounds unusual. You'd probably think he was just another young animator making niche videos for a small audience if you stumbled onto his channel with zero context. But it is important to understand that animation memes and Roblox style content don't attract a general audience. They attract kids because that's who's on Roblox and that's who watches this genre of animation. The stats say Roblox itself has almost 40 million users under the age of 13 that log in every day to play Roblox games. That explains why most of GovKDF's audience was young, whether it was his comment section, his fan base, or his Discord server. It all skewed young from the start. And if you look at the Gov's fan art, it clearly seems like it is created by children who are still beginners. If that alone isn't convincing enough, there are even videos of children openly standing him. So it's obvious that whatever he built with that platform, most of the people consuming it were children. And that's where things start getting strange, because behind those animations, GovKDF wasn't just showing off his art, he was portraying himself as someone kids naturally wanted to protect. For instance, his mascot described him as a shy guy who got scared by the smallest things. His art was used to tell a story that he wanted everyone to believe about himself, one where he came across as helpless, misunderstood, and constantly suffering. His old YouTube bio is a perfect example of this. It described Gov as kind, easy to use, weak, and a crybaby. He even called himself cringe, almost like it was a badge of honor. Think about what that kind of description does to a young audience. A grown man calling himself weak and easy to use doesn't sound threatening. It sounds soft, like someone who wouldn't hurt a fly because he can barely take care of himself. Because of that image, kids approached him like a friend. He came across as gentle and a little pathetic in an endearing way, and that made him feel safe to talk to and easy to get close to. He was so kind that he would reply to almost every single piece of fan art made of him and repost it. To a child, that kind of attention means everything. Getting noticed by your favorite creator is enough to build a genuine emotional connection. That fragile personality is exactly what let him build such a young following in the first place. His own claimed suffering pulled in sympathy and attention over and over. His personality reinforced the same idea in his audience's minds that this was just a soft and harmless guy who needed someone to be kind to him. Every interaction only strengthened that image. Usually, an adult acting strangely around a child should raise red flags. But GovKDF had already trained his viewers to see him as someone who needed comforting rather than someone worth watching closely. And once someone earns that kind of trust, people naturally stop questioning the things they say. But what was it exactly that made kids feel like they needed to comfort him? Firstly, he claimed he was one of the rarest people in the world because of a health condition he had. The condition is called aquagenic urticaria. Aquagenic urticaria is a rare condition where your skin breaks out in itchy hives whenever it comes into contact with water. Up until now, fewer than 100 people in medical history have been diagnosed with aquagenic urticaria. Apparently, Gov was one of them. He claimed it was so severe he couldn't even drink water. But here's the problem. Most documented cases of aquagenic urticaria involve a skin reaction to water. It is not a disease that comes with inability to drink it. People who actually have the condition can usually drink water normally. While Gov said he had to drink milk and even his tears made his eyes burn red, GovKDF's version doesn't line up with how the condition shows up in nearly any real case on record. So either he wildly exaggerated a real diagnosis for sympathy, or he was claiming to be one of the rarest medical cases on the planet. Those are really the only two possibilities. And to the kids who believed him, there wasn't much reason to question it, because Gov came across as a trustworthy guy, and also because kids don't exactly spend their free time reading medical research papers to fact check someone's condition. Another reason kids did not question him much was because, according to Gov himself, he could literally die from the stress it would cause him. He mentioned it himself that he had a weak heart condition, so stressing him out was never an option. Looking back, almost every part of the image he built encouraged people to feel sorry for him before they ever thought to question him. But his health wasn't the only reason that helped create that image. It was just the beginning, because Gov wasn't only asking people to believe his medical conditions, he was also asking them to believe an entire world built around him. A world filled with family members, mysterious entities, and loyal friends who always seemed to appear whenever his stories needed them. Gov's world came down to 3 people he wrote into his own life. The first was Knox, who Gov described as his older brother. According to him, Knox was for years. He claimed Knox had tried to kill Gov so many times that he lost the count. He even tried to drown him, strangle him, and force himself on him. If everything he said was true, then Knox wasn't only an abusive sibling, but also the source of almost every trauma Gov claimed to carry with him. He also said Knox abused animals in their home, including a kitten that had to be rehomed after Knox allegedly strangled it. So his traumas were partly the reason why kids felt sorry for him. It made Gov look less like an internet creator and more like someone who had survived an unbelievably tragic childhood. But this seems too fabricated when you see the full picture. Gov said Knox supposedly disappeared after a prank went wrong. He fell from somewhere and was never found. He's presumed dead, though even GovKDF has stayed vague about whether he actually believes that. This was a badly crafted lie, because how come his parents never called the police? And how come there was no investigation? He lives in New York, and CCTV footage must have been available. Did they just presume him dead and move on like nothing happened? This sounds even worse than the previous lie. Yet GovKDF insisted Knox was completely real. He went after people online who questioned it. To him, doubting Knox was questioning one of the biggest tragedies of his life. And as if Knox wasn't enough to lie, there was also Oz. GovKDF described Oz as an entity that spoke to him inside his own head. He said he originally thought Oz might be God, but apparently Oz didn't want to be framed that way. He claimed Oz pushed him toward things he knew weren't right, and that it got worse over time. He said Oz could physically change and manipulate him and would sometimes stop him from eating. He even claimed he brought it up to a doctor and never got a real answer. It sounds like someone describing an incredibly serious mental health struggle, but the way Oz was later used is what makes the story take a much darker turn, as this is something that scared even the kids who comforted him. GovKDF used it more than once to convince a 13-year-old girl that she could be physically altered by it too. A grown adult was convincing a child that a self-made entity could affect her as well. That goes far beyond simply talking about your mental health online. GovKDF built an entire narrative around a dead brother and a mind-controlling entity purely as tools to shape how a young, trusting audience saw him. That is a staggering amount of effort to maintain a version of yourself that may have never existed in the first place. And then there's Dude. GovKDF described Dude as a real-life friend who took over his account and ran his server whenever he wasn't around. It sounds believable enough. Friends help each other all the time. But the moment people started comparing the posts, things stopped adding up. Because later, Dude became the reason Gov was exposed, and that's what makes this so disturbing. None of these stories stayed in the background. It was actively being used. The people closest to GovKDF inside his old server were almost entirely young girls between 12 and 14, with some members as young as 10. These aren't kids mature enough to spot manipulation when it's dressed up as vulnerability. They're exactly the audience most likely to believe a grown man who presents himself as haunted and constantly on the verge of dying. And when you realize who that fictional world was actually used for, it sounds more than just disturbing. Because all these medical conditions and characters he built were not real, they were used as a weapon to control real children for years. In January 2026, an animator named Ducky Duck, also known as Skelly, had been contacted by 3 of GovKDF's own fans who had something to say. Skelly did not reveal their names for the sake of their privacy, but she referenced them as Purple, Blue, and Yellow. That's how they'll be referred to here too. Blue and Purple were 13 years old, while Yellow was 14 years old. Purple reached out to Skelly on January 19, 2026, directly asking to talk about something involving GovKDF. Skelly said she had a feeling what it was about before she even opened the message, because she herself had previously confronted Gov for his shady attitude. Skelly said that she had a direct confrontation with Gov where she told him plainly that his actions were harmful and that he needed to see a psychologist. Gov then announced a break because of this confrontation. Purple had comforted GovKDF after that since he described it as deeply upsetting to him. So when Purple, Blue, and Yellow needed somewhere to turn later on, Skelly was already someone who had shown she was willing to speak up against Gov's attitude. She accepted the invite and got added to a group chat with all 3 girls. What the 3 girls described once they were together in that chat was not a single bad moment, but a sequence of being controlled for more than a year. And this is where Gov's story starts falling apart. Purple explained that Blue, Yellow, and GovKDF had all been friends for over a year. Notice how Purple started off by mentioning that it was a bad choice to be friends with someone who is a decade older than them. If a 13-year-old was mature enough to realize this friendship was a bad choice, a 23-year-old man was certainly fully aware that building friendship with young girls was completely inappropriate. For more than a year, he had been manipulating these girls and had done awfully questionable things. These were 3 girls, and you might think that despite being young, how 3 of them could be fooled all at once by a fully grown up man. Well, that is because within that friendship, he would confide personal secrets to each girl individually and then ask each one specifically not to share it with the others. This isolated each girl from the other 2 so they could not catch Gov's manipulating attitude early. And whenever any of them tried to pull back emotionally or set even a small boundary, GovKDF had a response ready. He'd make himself the one in distress and guilt trip them until they were the ones comforting him instead of the other way around. Purple described how this left lasting effects on her ability to trust people. Blue independently described the exact same dynamic, making her deeply uncomfortable. And so did Yellow. But none of this was new. To truly understand the scale of his manipulation, we need to trace back his pattern to one of his earliest victims. Gov's core pattern reaches back roughly 2 years earlier to Orange, who was GovKDF's earliest known victim. She was 12 to 13 years old when she became close to him as a friend. Orange had actually deleted her Discord account entirely because of the terrible experience she had with Gov. She only came back to provide evidence once she learned that Skelly was investigating the whole matter. She and Purple had stayed in loose contact through Pinterest, and that's how Orange first found out the group chat existed and asked to be included so she could share her own account too. Her story mirrors Purple, Blue, and Yellow's almost exactly, just 2 years earlier. In 2024, GovKDF and Orange became friends. In November 2024, Gov asked Orange for her home address. He said he wanted to help Orange by reporting an abusive situation in her household to the police. And while Orange reassured that she was not panicking about it, Gov still kind of framed it as a situation where Orange would faint. Apparently, a grown adult should deal with such situations from an emotionally intelligent space, but Gov wanted it to look worse than it was with the intention to make Orange even more scared. Any responsible adult in that position would tell a 12-year-old to contact the police directly or reach out to Child Protective Services. He wouldn't ask for her address himself to report it. Yet after requesting her address, GovKDF also encouraged Orange to consider running away from home. This was so irresponsible and careless of Gov to suggest. Running away carries serious, well-documented risks for kids, including exposure to violence and homelessness, along with strong long-term links to worse mental health outcomes and higher dropout rates. Gov was 22 at the time and was old enough to have known at least some of that. Alongside all this, Orange described intense guilt tripping and emotional pressure in private messages. In one screenshot she provided, GovKDF described himself in graphic, self-deprecating terms, listing off every way he believes he's failed the people around him and saying he deserves the bad things that have happened to him. That's a grown man sending that to a 12-year-old, by the way. And before we get further into what else else he did to Orange, let's have a look at his royalty system. Inside his Discord server, GovKDF maintained a system of ranked roles based on how much a member liked him, ranging from obsessed at one end to hater at the other, with several ranks in between. He kept a channel literally named Hate, and at one point maintained a playlist on his YouTube channel made up entirely of hate videos aimed at him. Every part of this, the roles, the hate channel, the persona in his bio, was structured around the same goal of sorting his audience by loyalty, and he was rewarding the children closest to him with more access and more of his attention. And since 12-year-old Orange was incredibly close to him, he had placed her in the obsessed server. But then on a random day, GovKDF removed Orange's obsessed role in his server. When Orange asked the reason, he dismissed the question. When she tried to end the conversation to go do something else, he told her he'd wait and that she couldn't avoid talking to him. When she came back later and said she couldn't keep waiting, he got upset. He eventually told her he'd never message her again. A 12-year-old was being guilt-tripped by an adult for not responding quickly enough during school hours. Just like this one incident, he was always ventish to her. She said it was easy to feel emotionally dependent on him because he was older and someone she looked up to. That same core behavior present with Orange 2 years earlier repeats itself almost exactly with the newer group of girls. But this time, the details became more intense and hard to ignore. Like when Gov asked Orgain for her address, we could consider it as a protective measure. But then a year later, he asked Purple in the friend group for her phone's IMEI number, a 15-digit code that identifies a specific device. That number can be used to look up a device's model, its warranty status, and its carrier, and in the wrong hands, it can potentially be used to try to track a device's real-time location. 13-year-old Purple didn't know what the number was for at the time and gave it to him without understanding what she was actually handing over. Then in November 2025, GovKDF asked Yellow for both her home address and the name of her school. He followed it up with a comment saying he might come see her. After learning her address, he told her in a separate message not to worry if she woke up somewhere other than home. Well, that straight up implies and it should scare anyone in their right senses just like it scared Yellow. He then asked Purple for an address too, and when Purple asked him what he meant, he just kept making it more confusing. He first said he wouldn't kidnap her, then followed it up with nothing but ellipses when she asked again. We could give it a benefit of doubt and assume it was a joke between actual friends, but even then it reads very differently coming from an adult who isn't this child's friend in any equal sense. He has no reasonable context in which he is allowed to joke in such a way to a minor at all. And it cannot be ignored so easily because all three separate girls, Orange, Purple, and Yellow, had been asked for their address throughout these 2 years. If it had been a one-time joke, no one would remember it, not even the girls. But he kept repeating it to the extent that he thought it would be funny to give a disclaimer of to a 13-year-old. And sadly, the children were young enough not to recognize it as a threat because Gov would be sad if they questioned him and would guilt trip them by saying he had a weak heart. Gov's manipulation game had all these children scared of holding him accountable. But all of this was just the top of an iceberg, because alongside this stalking, he had also been rooming these girls silently. Orange is the first known person who exposed how weirdly he talked to her. Like once GovKDF told Orange that he wanted to be with her constantly. In August 2025, she suggested he take care of himself, and he responded by saying he just wanted to be near her instead. He called her beautiful in extended messages. Orange herself said these messages made her feel physically sick. She described how he'd frequently call the girls around him angels, and how his kindness toward her somehow left her feeling guilty instead of comforted. Even Yellow was called an angel by him. What genuinely disturbed Yellow was his fantasy about her. On May 31st, 2025, Yellow sent a video of herself to Gov where she was crying over something. Gov took advantage of her vulnerability and said, "I want to hug you so bad, hug that you will feel better. I want to pat your head so you will still cry, but out of happiness now. I want to cover you with blanket and give tea and cookies, and I don't want to say that, but I want to do." That is downright pathetic and just not something that we can ignore over and over again. And if Yellow was verbally harassed by him, Purple had gone through an even worse experience. Gov took it to the next level by drawing a picture of himself hugging Purple. He had drawn Purple as a young girl, so he clearly knew the age difference. And hugging her OC from back was so weird because you just cannot understand what kind of hug that is. His art style is creepy as fuck. This guy was clearly obsessing over little girls, exploiting the trust and vulnerability they placed in him as a popular creator. Like one of the victims of GovKDF mentioned how she thought Gov was someone she thought she could trust, but it proved to be wrong. She does not wish this upon anyone, no matter the circumstances. I thought I could trust, but I was wrong. I do not wish this upon anyone. no matter the circumstances. Stay safe online, people. Take this as a lesson me and the other victims give you as heritage. I seriously don't understand how someone could be this immature and just outright disgusting. And if rooming didn't make the matter worse, what he did next is beyond any sane person's comprehension. Because while he was rooming kids and asking for their address, he was also controlling these individuals through fear at the same time. Remember the self-made entity Oz who Gov claimed spoke inside his head? Purple says GovKDF privately told her that Oz could see Purple too. He claimed Oz had the power to physically change her. He didn't present this to her as a story or a creative idea. She says it caused real ongoing fear in her, including anxiety about her own body. Gov really got her to believe that Oz was somehow watching her even in ordinary moments. Gov vented about Oz to Purple specifically and privately. He'd reportedly get scared to talk about it with anyone else, which meant the full weight of that secret and everything that came with holding it landed on a 13-year-old girl. At one point, he even drew an image showing Purple as having been changed by Oz and showed it to her directly. He since deleted it, but Purple says it gave her nightmares for weeks and describes the content as deeply unsettling. It is so shocking that a grown man used a fictional entity he built himself to frighten a 13-year-old about her own body. And he did it privately, where no one else in the group could see it happening or step in to stop it. And when Purple tried to talk it out with someone else, Gov got mad at her. He had isolated Purple with this little self-made secret of his, but Oz was not the only tactic he used to control his young fans. He even faked a medical coma. His friend Dude supposedly stepped in to run his account and manage his server while he recovered. The friend group believed this lasted around 2 weeks. During that stretch, Dude kept posting content including character models that took real time and effort to produce. The Dude story started falling apart once the girls compared notes directly. They noticed Dude's art style, down to specific rendering choices and mistakes, was nearly identical to GovKDF's own. They noticed his typing patterns, his phrasing, and even his typos matched too closely to be coincidence. And that is when they realized they were being manipulated by Gov. So on January 19th, Purple messaged Ducky Duck directly asking for outside help understanding what was going on. Gov has been in a coma for the past 3 weeks. Apparently, I must add again. His friend's been texting us using his phone. We think Gov is kind of a liar, to be honest. That's the message that pulled Ducky Duck into the group chat where Purple, Blue, and Yellow laid out their full case. First among themselves, then directly to Dude. They confronted him point by point for the identical art style and for the identical typing quirks. Dude tried to lie that he was posting old pre-recorded videos on GovKDF's behalf during the coma. This explanation was something the girls found hard to believe given how much new content kept appearing. Dude denied everything. At first, he defended GovKDF on points he would have had no real reason to know about. He also claimed GovKDF had briefly woken up during the coma and just needed more rest. That explanation only made things more suspicious. Eventually, Dude cracked under continued pressure. He admitted GovKDF had actually only been unreachable for 9 days, a number that flatly contradicted what the girls had been told, since by that point, they believed GovKDF had been in the coma for closer to 2 weeks. Within minutes of Dude giving that number, GovKDF himself reappeared in the group chat. Think about what that timing actually requires. Dude would have had to physically reach him, explain the entire situation, and hand back his phone, all in an implausibly short window. GovKDF apologized once he came back. But even in that apology, he reframed the situation. He told the group he needed a break. That shifted at least part of the emotional weight of his disappearance back onto the very children who had spent 2 weeks believing he might be dying. Yellow told him directly how disappointed she was. She said his apology wouldn't undo what they'd gone through, especially after spending that stretch of time genuinely praying for him to recover. GovKDF responded by calling himself stupid and saying he hadn't realized it would affect them the way it did. The damage went far beyond the victims he targeted directly. Beyond the request for personal information and the fictional world he used to manipulate them, GovKDF's old Discord server exposed a much wider group of kids to psychological harm. Some of them were as young as 10 years old. This goes beyond his relationships with Purple, Blue, Yellow, and Orange individually. His server had a dedicated venting channel where members were encouraged to share personal struggles openly. And there was a rule attached to it: if someone vented and wasn't comforted by another member, that member could be banned. If you ever will ignore someone's #vent, it will be bad. If you can't comfort, at least to show your care, even if you don't. The more you ignore, the more chance I will do something bad. That meant kids as young as 10 were being pressured to emotionally support other members, including teenagers dealing with serious personal issues. If they refused, they risked losing access to the community altogether. That channel wasn't a safe place for kids to vent. There was no structure and no one making sure things stayed healthy. Instead, it became a place where very young children were constantly exposed to things they were never meant to deal with. And if they refused to take part, they risked being punished. And the consequences weren't just theoretical. Multiple children in the server reportedly ended up after being exposed to this environment for so long. Because inside that server, Gov also kept what he described as a written record of SH in a notebook. Every time a member mentioned self-harm, he'd log it. He told his audience he intended to eventually act on all of it himself, all at once, like their pain was something he was collecting and would one day repay in kind. The kids were literally scared of the notebook. On March 1st, 2025, he was talking to Red, who was 12 years old. He told them that for one mistake, one vein is gone, and if Red or any other fan made a mistake, he would remove a vein. Another user who later spoke about what happened was Pink. She was only 10 years old at the time. According to Orange, GovKDF allowed her into the server on the condition that she stayed in the venting channel. But because he failed to properly manage that space, she was constantly exposed to other children's darkest thoughts and experiences at an age when she couldn't possibly understand or process any of it. His negligence created an environment where this kept happening again and again to different children over a long period of time. Orange described it as something that spread from person to person. She said GovKDF never directly encouraged her to self-harm. Instead, it was the constant emotional pressure he created. He was always asking for comfort, always hinting that he was in crisis, and over time the entire server started revolving around his need for attention. And as more distressed kids poured into the venting channel, hoping for his attention, that behavior started spreading. More and more members became desperate for the same validation he'd trained them to give him. Anyways, he was also frequently using a long acronym for SH. When something like this becomes normal in a space full of young, impressionable kids, it spreads. Children that age don't always have the emotional maturity to recognize when they're being manipulated or pulled into unhealthy behavior, and that makes what happened next even more disturbing. GovKDF later admitted privately to Skelly that the notebook was never real. According to him, it was meant to keep his viewers safe by making them think he'd hurt himself if they ever self-harmed. Whatever his original intention was, the outcome was anything but protective. By his own account, his idea of keeping people safe was threatening self-harm in front of an audience that included elementary school aged children. That's not a safety measure, it's the same manipulation tactic, except this time it was aimed at an entire server instead of just one person. And this wasn't an isolated incident. The same pattern of using guilt and emotional distress to control people shows up repeatedly in his interactions with Yellow. In May 2025, Yellow casually mentioned to Gov that a classmate might have a crush on her. GovKDF immediately twisted it into an accusation. He implied she had reminded him of wanting to hurt himself years earlier, and that her comment showed she still wanted him to. Her actual words got misread and twisted into a way to make her feel responsible for his emotional state over something she hadn't intended at all. GovKDF reacted the same way toward other members too, including a child referred to as Lilac. When Lilac mentioned feeling depressed, GovKDF responded by implying her feelings had harmed him. Yellow tried to defend Lilac, and Gov turned on Yellow instead, accusing her of lying. He then went on to saying he wanted to be silent forever. Yeah, I definitely must be silent forever. I will never talk again. Bye. He said that he had cut himself 3 times that day because of that. Here we go again to Gov guilt tripping yet another minor. He then said he wanted to disappear into the nearest lake. That comment was made directly to a 13-year-old in the middle of a conversation that had started with another child simply saying she felt sad. He turned the whole scenario into a situation that wanted to make him drown himself. Taken individually, each of these moments could be argued away as poor judgment from someone immature or mentally unwell. What he did was absolutely disgusting. I'm not sure if he was like that because of a mental illness or not. He still damaged real people emotionally and physically. I really hope the victims heal. But after enough examples, it stops looking like a series of mistakes and starts looking like a pattern. That's why when you look at everything together, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. Whether it was Yellow, Lilac, Sage, Pink, or the rest of the server, the response was always the same. Whenever a child expressed pain, discomfort, or even an identity he didn't agree with, he found a way to make it about himself. His feelings came first, no matter the child's age or what they were dealing with. It's honestly disgusting how people do this. They're kids. When you emotionally ruin a child, you're messing with their mind. And because they aren't fully developed, they don't know if it's wrong or right. There are also some other miscellaneous things he did that are just straight up worthy of a side eye. Like he reposted a fan art of himself and his dead brother where both of them were being shipped. That is kind of necrophilia because he should be deleting it, not reposting it by rebranding it with a touch of necrophile tag. And as if the necrophile tag was not bad enough, he then posted a drawing of himself drooling over a 13-year-old. It was due to this disturbing attitude that Skelly personally confronted GovKDF more than once over roughly 2 years. She told him directly that his actions were harmful. We have already seen the first of these confrontations happen after Skelly joined his server in June 2025 and started noticing his behavior firsthand. She told him plainly in DMs that what he was doing was creepy and that he needed psychological support. GovKDF had apologized at that moment, but the apology didn't address any of the specific behavior being raised. It was a pattern that would repeat for the next 2 years. He would acknowledge just enough to end the conversation without ever actually changing course. Whenever he got confronted, GovKDF would tweak things just enough to ease people's concerns without ever dealing with the real issue. Like after being confronted about the self notebook and the venting channel, he stopped referencing the notebook publicly and eventually deleted the venting channel outright. On the surface, these look like real steps toward accountability, but months after one of these confrontations, GovKDF deleted his entire old Discord server, the same server that contained the bulk of the evidence documented throughout this video. GovKDF didn't delete the server until months after people confronted him. If he was truly remorseful, you would expect him to change his behavior immediately. Instead, waiting that long makes it look less like remorse and more like an attempt to erase evidence before it could be used against him. His apologies followed the same pattern every time. Even his most recent public apology about the faked coma wasn't something he wrote from scratch. It was a heavily edited and watered down version of an older apology he'd already made, reused and trimmed down to fit the latest situation instead of actually addressing what happened. No matter which apology you look at, the pattern is always the same. About 10% is spent acknowledging what happened, while the other 90% shifts the focus back onto his own guilt or the people who were upset with him. He never publicly named or directly addressed the behavior people were actually criticizing. Instead, he hid behind vague statements about needing a break, making mistakes, or not knowing any better, while avoiding any real explanation of what he'd actually done to the children around him. Then, in May 2026, GovKDF announced another change. He said his DMs and a newly created Discord server would now be restricted to users who were 18 or older. From that point on, he publicly claimed that only adults would be able to interact with him. The timing of that announcement is hard to ignore. It came right around the time GovKDF learned that Ducky Duck was making a video exposing him and had no intention of dropping it. By that point, nearly 2 years of documented interactions with children had already happened. Introducing an 18+ boundary only after the exposure became unavoidable didn't erase or undo what had already happened to the children who were affected. Around that same time, GovKDF reportedly sent a message to Ducky Duck's partner. He also began telling them that he wanted to hurt himself because he could no longer talk to minors online. It was yet another attempt to gain sympathy and attention, and it came at the exact moment he realized the video wasn't going to be stopped. Then, on June 8th, 2026, Skelly finally dropped the video. It blew up almost instantly, pulling in more than twice as many views as Gov had subscribers. And with that, GovKDF suddenly had far more people criticizing him than supporting him. I had no idea who or what Gov was until I saw this video. This guy made my blood boil. Minors, faking his identity, making up his own mental issues, and even pretending he's dead just to manipulate kids. I am truly disgusted by his foolish behavior from a 23-year-old dude. The backlash came and people absolutely hated him. This situation is really disturbing. A literal adult acting this way towards literal kids is really gross. This guy and people like him are the reason we should keep the death penalty legal in the US. This situation is really disturbing. A literal adult acting this way towards literal kids is really gross. And of course, thanks to Skelly for bringing this to light, as whatever evidence is presented in this video is directly taken from the files she leaked. Anyways, since the backlash was huge, GovKDF posted a response addressing the accusations directly during the same week. In it, he stated that he is a bad guy, that he doesn't deserve anyone's pity, and that bad guys shouldn't be given pity. He confessed to the behavior covered throughout this video. No one showed him mercy this time. This time, his shy and scared persona wasn't gonna do him any good. I'm highly disappointed with you. Yeah, bye and don't come back. He then deleted all his posts on YouTube channel. In his own words, by his own account, he was gone. And his own username puts it right. For the sake of the victims who finally spoke out, we can only hope his new channel name is a promise he actually keeps, quitting for good.